Hi everybody, I'm Heather Poduska, star maker to entrepreneurs who want to find their authentic voice and command any stage. Welcome to Thrive, the show where I bring you tips, resources, and people to help you create a more abundant life and business. You're in for high-value content coming to you from industry leaders who are growing their business, making an impact, and rocking their brands. And I am so thrilled to have my special guest here today, Claudio Toyama. Claudio Toyama is the CEO of Toyama Company, an international leadership consultancy specializing in building sustainable peak performance cultures. He is also a Forbes contributor, a sought-after international speaker, and a featured guest on television, including NBC and Fox, where Claudio shares his unique expertise on leadership and company culture. He is the co-author of Leadership, the Faculty of Leadership Speakers Academy at West Point, and an author of the forthcoming book, Samurai Samba Vinci Way, How to Improve Your Executive Presence, Increase Your Trust, and Lead Your Team at a World-Class Level. Claudio has delivered projects to over 113 countries. He's traveled to over 40 countries, and he's lived in 5 countries, including Brazil, Italy, Japan, the UK, and the US. And now he is right here in our studio. Claudio, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and travels to be here.
Thank you.
So what brings you to Boston?
So I came to deliver a speech, at Harvard for the Harvard Business Forum, and that's what brought me here. And actually, as I was coming here, I was also invited to give a talk at Fidelity Investments, and so that was about high-performance teams and high-performance culture. So that was pre-Harvard, so it was amazing. And now I'm here at the studios and having this interview. Thank you.
Yeah, more than welcome. I'm really excited to have you here. So talk to us a little bit about what kind of work you do. Obviously, you work at a very high level, Fidelity, you're traveling you told me you're traveling to Brazil next week to do more training. Talk to us a little bit about the training that you do.
Yeah, so I do a lot of, there are 3 sections of the things that I do. One of which is the consulting part. The consulting is about customer experience and employee experience. So I understand what the customers want from their businesses and I understand what the employees want. The second part, which has a lot to do with the customer experience and the employee experience, which is the leadership development. Because a lot of companies, they have problems with the leadership. And they don't know. A lot of times you have subject matter experts that were promoted, for instance, let's say a biotechnology company. So you had someone that was a PhD in biomolecular, whatever it is, and they get promoted to become a manager and then directors, vice presidents, and they have never learned how to manage people. So I work with them to develop them as leaders instead of just being the managers or being the vice presidents or the directors that they are. And the third part, which is the executive coaching, which is tied in, with the leadership, and then the training. Actually, so when I work with the leaders, I also work with their teams. So, for instance, if it is negotiation skills or influencing skills or presence and gravitas, all of that, we work with the groups of people as well. So. Customer experience, leadership development, and executive coaching, and the trainings and facilitation and all of that. So those are the 3 aspects.
I love it. And you were talking about presence. Talk to us a little bit about presence, because I'm a really big believer in presence. And as a brand, if you're an employee, you're still a brand. You have your personal brand. So talk to us a little bit about the importance of presence in terms of being a leader and how that can impact in a positive way your status or detract from it.
Oh yes, so presence is huge. Presence and gravitas are huge. Because for instance, a recent client of mine, a Nobel Prize winner in physics that I mentioned during the Harvard speech. So he works at NASA. He got the prize some years ago. He has been invited all over the world to deliver talks. He is, of course, he knows his subject inside out, because he is one of the top leaders in the world on that topic. But what happened was he was not connecting with people. So that's where he wanted me to work on. He wanted me to work with his presence and his gravitas, so that when he was talking, he was really connecting with everyone that he was talking to. He was talking, connecting with the audience. So actually, it can either, if you don't have presence, yes, it can detract from your impact. Because if you don't have presence, they're gonna go, I'm not really sure if they know what they're talking about. Because maybe they're too shy, and you can even see in the body language, and not only in the body language, but also the intonation and how firm they are being, and all of that. And having content is great, but you also need to have all the other aspects that go with it.
Absolutely. I've been, I don't know if you know this about me, but I've been an opera singer for many years, and we sing in Italian, French, German, English, and a lot of people who go to the opera aren't fluent in those languages, and you still have to convey the story with your body language. It's so important. So in terms of customer service, and how does that get played out in terms of keeping the brand? Because you have to set the brand, right? And the people underneath you to make sure that everybody's living up to the brand so that you can deliver a consistent customer message and experience.
So let me give you an example. As you know, I have lived in London for many years, almost 12 years I lived there. So imagine Virgin America, and then imagine British Airways. So you have completely different cultures. So for the British Airways, if they were playful, it would not be on brand, because British Airways is very that's that royalty kind of brand. If you go to Virgin America, it is a completely different brand. You need to be like, even it is fascinating, because even the safety video is amazing.
Really?
I was watching that over and over again. Like, oh my God, this is so amazing! It's catchy music.
Which one is this one?
The Virgin America.
Oh, I'm flying Virgin.
Oh, yeah. It's like, oh my God, it's amazing. And I was like, oh my God, this is so great. So it is catchy, but if they were going to do that for British Airways, it would be completely off-brand. So talking about that, and talking about being present or being who you are, you need to be on brand, and at the same time you need to be who you are. So if you are, let's say, here in the US, Southwest, they are playful. They do everything very precisely, and they put the playfulness on top of it. But if other brands wanted to do that, let's say US Air or whatever, they would be off-brand, and they would be like, people would be like, what is happening with this guy, or what is happening with this lady? There's something off here, because they're not they're not on brand. So
So what do you advise companies in terms of hiring, or do you talk to them about that in terms of acquiring people to be good brand ambassadors? How do you talk? Do you talk to people about that?
I do. Yeah, I do talk about that, because actually one of the principles of having high performance teams is for them to be on brand.
Right.
Because let's say Southwest employee, they are fun. So they hire for that aspect as well, not only for being very good at what they do, but also for being fun. So imagine if you get a really serious person, and that's not going to be on brand.
Right.
They can be amazing at what they do, but if they are customer facing, if they are a customer facing employee, they're not going to be on brand, and it's going to be completely off. So yes, they do need to hire for that as well, and for the team play as well.
Right.
Or if they are too playful, and the British Airways like, oh, what's happening here?
No, I'm going with the other one. That sounds more fun. I don't like flying anyway, so I want to be relaxed.
Okay, yes.
But I read a while ago, is it Selling Happiness, Tony Hsieh, Zappos story?
Yes.
And he talks about the hiring process.
Yeah.
Because they don't hire someone unless they're on brand.
Yes.
Unless they know, well, I guess they talk about it in terms of company culture.
Yeah.
Because he was saying that it's really hard to hire someone who isn't who's not going to be a natural fit and then train them.
Yeah.
It's better to hire someone who's already a natural fit.
Yes, and for Tony Hsieh, he is actually one of the case studies for customer experience around the world. And did you know that they pay the person, if they are not a good fit, they pay the person to leave?
Wow.
Yes, they say, okay, here you go, you have I think it is $2,000, or
Wow.
it was $2,000, and they go, okay, here you go, off you go.
Wow.
After a certain period of time,
Yeah.
that they see if it is not a match, a complete match, they say, okay, you're off.
But that makes sense because you think about, people who are making things slow down, who are maybe damaging your brand equity, like all of those things. It's really important.
Yes.
So what differences have you noticed in leadership styles globally? I mean, you have this unique experience. You've been all over, you've not just traveled all over the world, but lived in lots of different places. So what are the differences in leadership styles?
Ooh, there are so many differences.
Yeah.
So many differences. But I think that, of course, in Asian countries, if I'm going to generalize now, like the stereotype of things that I have observed. So the Asian countries, the leaders are much more, this is what you're going to do and this is how you're going to do it, and they're much more demanding in that way. Whereas if you are in Europe, of course I'm generalizing, like massively.
Yeah.
So there are differences in each country, of course. But in Europe is much more the conversation and involvement, and here in the US as well, much more involving the team and getting consensus, and let's say in Latin America it is also a mix of a balance of this is how you're going to do it and a little bit of consensus. So there is always a mix, but it depends very much on which country you are.
Sure.
You're in, and also even inside the country, you can have a completely different leadership style in the East Coast and the West Coast, for instance. Very, very different because of the cultures are really different. So it is a part of the bigger country culture, and then you go into the company culture, and then you go into even the departments culture, and then you go into the group culture, which are all part of the same thing, but each one has their own flavor.
So do you ever advise companies that have to interact internationally on how to communicate the best way and how to, so what are some mistakes that people make, and what are some tips about really being on brand, being polished, showing up as a leader, and being respectful of the other culture?
Yeah, so let me give you an example. So you always have to understand, first of all, you need to really understand the culture that you're going to or that you're dealing with. For instance, the beautiful example is Brazilians going to the UK, because Brazilians are like, like really big and loud and touching people. And when you go to the UK, they're very subdued. They're really quiet, apologetic about a lot of things, like, oh, I beg your pardon, and then they start, and oh, I'm sorry. It's like so imagine those two cultures clashing. So I've had meetings, for instance, one meeting that I went to, this guy, Brazilian guy, working for this worldwide company. He was visiting the UK. I was living in the UK at the time. He goes into a meeting with his wife. And the British people were like, why is his wife here? And for him, it was like, oh, we're visiting. I want to get to know my colleagues in the UK. Why not bring my wife along?
Wow.
So that was a huge culture clash that was never talked about.
Wow. Yeah.
And you could see the puzzled face, the British, and the guy was just like being normal, like, yeah, of course I'm gonna bring my wife.
Yeah. Wow.
Which was really, really interesting.
Yeah.
Because you need to be aware of the culture, so that you're not clashing without even knowing that you're clashing. It's like, or doing a faux pas in the middle of a meeting. You're having a complete faux pas. I still remember my own case when I arrived in the UK. So, having growing up in Brazil, lived a little bit in Japan, and then spending some time in Italy. So, Italy and Brazil, like talking with the hands, and of course, touching people, like, hey, how are you doing? I remember my first day at work in the UK. I touched the shoulder of my colleague. He was sitting down. I touched the shoulder just to say, hey, how are you doing? He just did this. He looked at me with that face. He didn't say anything. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot. I knew, but I completely forgot because I was being so natural, touching his shoulder. And he was like, he just gave me that look like, what are you doing? Invading my space.
Wow.
So that was a complete faux pas that I was just like I did not, even remember that I did that. So.
Well, I don't know. I just think people must be somewhat forgiving, though, if you.
Sometimes they are, but in this case, he was like, he was not in a good situation in his, life. So he was like very grumpy, and he was like, so.
But that's not your fault.
I know. But
you can't control that.
But I felt really bad. Anyways, like,
But it brings up an interesting point because the world is getting more integrated, right?
Yes.
I mean, I know in the United States, the color of the United States is changing, you know, the populations are mixing and the minorities are, the demographics are changing, even within companies, right? Yeah. So do you work at all with companies that have different ethnicities, different, religious backgrounds to really help them keep everybody, happily working together?
Yes. I have been focusing so much in technology companies, biotech companies, telecommunications companies, and those companies, they attract a lot of foreigners because they have the technical expertise. So a lot of Indians and Pakistanis and even people from Europe and from different countries around the world. So there's always going to be cultural clashes. So for instance, if you promote an Indian person, the Indian culture is much more dictating what the other people will do. So if they come to the US and dictate what they're going to do, they're going to have a mutiny.
Well, that is our thing.
Yes, like, hey, wait a minute. Hey, this is not how you lead.
Yeah.
You're not being a leader. And for that person, he's being a total leader.
Right.
So there are loads of culture clashes in that way. And I have been coaching executives that were even the tone of voice.
Wow.
Like, because they are really demanding like this. They're not really, they are using please and thank you, but they're like, oh, can I have this report by tomorrow morning, please? Like, whoo, okay, all right. So I had to work on that, just the tone of voice and how do you make requests and proper requests and all of that. So.
Well, your skill set is so unique and so valuable, and not a lot of people have that. Yeah. And I love how you've combined all of your experiences this is your new book, correct?
Yes, that is coming out.
The Samurai Samba Vinci.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about the book.
So the book has been 10 years in the making.
Wow.
So I have been living outside of Brazil for 22 years now. Over these last 10 years, I have been going through a lot of changes and going through so many different countries and so many different cultures, and I understood that I was becoming the stereotype of each country that I lived in. So when I got to the UK, which was the 4th country that I lived in, I did not even know who I was anymore. Because I was like, who am I? I have no idea. So the book has come from that, understanding what makes a world leader, a world-class leader and a world leader. So I started studying these people that are at the top of their games. So the Nobel Prize winners, the CEOs of companies, the heads of state. What is the differential that they have that the common people, even the vice presidents, don't have? So I started analyzing that, and when I started also working with these individuals, I really noticed that they are completely unapologetic about who they are. The difference between a CEO and a vice president in the organization is massive.
Wow.
There's a huge jump in terms of who they are being. So I noticed that they were being what I call the samurai. They have a very strong core, meaning they know who they are, what they stand for, what their values are, and that is set in stone. Okay, so these are things that I'm not gonna compromise. So this, very centered, samurai-like. But at the same time, that's what I call the samba. At the same time, they're very adaptable. So different situations, let's say, there's an economic downturn. They're very malleable, and they're very adaptable to different cultures. They're very adaptable to different environments. So that's the samba. But if you go just with the samurai, you're too rigid. If you go just with the samba, you're too flexible. Being too rigid, people can break you, or people can just say, we're not going to work with you because you're being just, this is what I do and that's the only way I do it. That's not good.
Right.
But if you're too malleable, you also can get lost. You can go lose yourself and you don't even know, and you're just following and just like saying yes to everything. So you need to combine both. And then what I talk about the Vinci is the Renaissance person. So it is amalgamating the whole person. So let's say, okay, so you're interviewing me here, and you're also an opera singer. You bring that skill in, you bring that passion in to become, the header that you are. Who is this person? It is the whole person. So that's where the Renaissance person comes from, and that's where you can innovate, and that's where you can bring all the beauty that you can.
I love that. And I was thinking as you're talking about the samurai that you have to be grounded to be really flexible, I think. Otherwise you're just floating.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's and you brought up singing, so I'll just continue that stream of thought. Singers who aren't grounded don't have a lot of flexibility. And if you're really grounded, then you can do all kinds of things with your voice and even your body. Like you can move your arms in certain ways when you're grounded. You have more freedom. So I really like that.
I love that.
Yeah, I love that. That's really beautiful. And only you could write that book.
Oh yes, I know.
Right?
Which is fascinating, because then I was looking at it and I was like, oh, wait a minute. Samurai? I come from a samurai family.
You do?
Yes. So
wow.
my family is,
I just got chills all over. That's great.
So yes, from my grandmother's side, they were samurai. From my grandfather's side, from my father's side. From my grandfather's side, they were sword making.
Wow. So
they got married and all of that, and then after the Second World War, they lost everything. So that's why my father and his family migrated to Brazil. And from my mother's side, the Vinci, which is like she is half Italian, half Austrian. My mom. So,
wow.
But she was born in Brazil.
Yeah.
And then of course the samba, Brazilian. So being born there, so it's like it's a little bit of me in every single one.
I love it, and it's so interesting. From what I've heard, there's a really big Japanese population in Brazil.
It's the largest Japanese community outside of Japan.
And do you know that Boston has one of the largest Brazilian populations in the world?
Oh, I did not know that.
Yes. So it's completely full circle.
I love it.
Isn't that awesome?
I love that.
I love it too. So where do you feel, what is home to you?
It is close to Washington, D.C.
And that feels like home? Like when you think, where's my home?
It does feel like home, but every time that I go back to Brazil, I feel that vibe as well. I love that vibe.
Yeah.
So yes, both are now my home.
Love it.
Yes, which is like every time that I go either to São Paulo, I feel home, and then I come back here, I feel home, which is really great.
That's awesome. Wow. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming and sharing your expertise. And I love the book. And if you're, if you're a leader, a CEO, and you want to be a better leader, I highly recommend that you read it. I'm excited to read it.
Yes.
And it was such a pleasure meeting you at Harvard, and I heard you talk, and I remember we talked about the samba and the samurai. I love that concept, and that you bring all of this expertise and all your life experience. I love that you bring your life experience into your brand and into your business to help people. And I think that in a world where there's a lot of divisiveness, that someone like you is really doing an important job. So
thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for being here. And one last question. What does it mean to you to thrive?
Oh, yes. I love that. Thrive is actually bringing your whole self to what you're doing, and then just allowing yourself to show up.
Love it.
And when you do that, you're actually going to thrive, when you get out of your own way.
I love it. And as always, here's to hitting all your high notes. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.